Right, thought I'd come back again to do something just to entertain myself more than anything. So I've had been a bit irritable today for no reason other than I'm just tired and yeah, just want to try and cheer myself up a bit by looking at a photograph. So let's take a look at a period Second World War image taken on the home front, showing some aspect of defence of the UK. So this is an image that I found a while back, and it's as always on the Imperial War Museum in the Imperial War Museum's collection. And it's a really cool image. There's a lot going on with this and a lot we can learn from it. So, doing what I always do, we'll take a look at the caption first. This was taken between the 11th and 12th of March 1941. It was part of a series called the War Correspondence or War Correspondence Visit Eastern Command, and it explains here a defence post manned during a mock invasion. A party of war correspondents representing fair good start. Three London evening papers toured the Eastern Command recently, which they saw various phases of troops training and operations. These pictures illustrate some of the things they saw. It's an interesting little series of some interesting bits and pieces going on. So this image was taken at Walton-on-the-Naze, and unfortunately there's no information about the troops in this image. But I'll look at that in a second, and I can tell you straight off the bat though, they aren't Home Guard. Again, remember in 4041 the Home Guard were not on frontline coastal defence in any way, shape or form, unless they were part of a coastal town, and even then they wouldn't have been occupying and garrisoning trenches like this. It wasn't until about 1943 that the Home Guard took on the operation of coastal artillery batteries, mostly 1944 in fact, by which time the threat of invasion was over and the scale of the defences had been reduced, so they wouldn't have been doing stuff like this anyway. So these are most likely regular or territorial army soldiers. We'll have a look at that in more detail in a second. Before I look into the detail of the image itself, then one thing I want to try and do is work out where this is. So for context, Walton-on-the-Naze is in Essex, as far as I'm aware. Let's double check. Yes, it's in Essex, and it sits a fair distance away from the mouth of the River Thames. So we're looking at this town here. Doing a bit of detective work, I'm fairly certain the trench was probably located in this general area here. So that information will now get nicked. But yeah, I think we're looking here in this general area. That makes sense to me. But yeah, anyway, it was top of someone's head. Looks very similar because we've got buildings in the background. We've got boulder clay cliffs. I'm sure that's boulder clay, and the position overlooks. You can clearly see it high tide here, and the position overlooks an expansive beach below. So yeah, I think we're looking at that general area again. This is my interpretation. I've spent a long time trying to find this trench as well, so don't be a knob and nick that information. Right, so coming back to the image itself then. So yeah, we've got troops, most likely regular and territorial army. In fact, let me have a look at the documentary side of things as well, because I wanted to try and identify which unit this was, but unfortunately I've not had much success. So I don't have, this is mainly because I don't have the relevant documents, so I don't have the 11 Corps War Diary. The closest I have is the 11 Corps Chief Royal Engineer War Diary, and all this states for this date is there was an exercise on the 10th of March 1941, and that's it. But that it's not because the information wasn't recorded, it's simply because I haven't got the information. If I had the information for the 11 Corps, I'd probably be able to find a bit more information out about this. In terms of the unit then, I took a look at the Eastern Command War Diary, which had no information about this exercise, but I did find a map which shows that Walton-on-the-Naze was in the 223rd Brigade's area of defence, so they were literally responsible for pretty much this area here, and then using, annoyingly they don't have in the Eastern Command War Diary, they don't have location statements, which is really annoying. So a location statement would allow me to kind of pinpoint where the units are, but they do have these long lists of code words, which are relatively entertaining. There's some interesting words in here. Yeah, and this has allowed me to trace the 223rd Infantry Brigade. So we're looking at possibly the 8th Battalion Suffolk Regiment, 10th Battalion Essex Regiment, or the 6th Battalion Northamptons being in this image. One of these units, possibly even the signal, or possibly the signal section, but I'm fairly certain it's going to be one of these battalions. They're more than likely to be Territorial Army units, but I'm happy to be corrected on that because I haven't checked. But yeah, a little bit of detective work there has allowed me to glean some information about who this unit is, but we can fairly safely say that they are Territorial Army. So let's have a look at the image itself. So we've got this really nicely built slit trench forming a possible section post. Worth me mentioning now that section post is a term that's been misused since the Second World War, and it's now used to describe large pillboxes, essentially. But a section post is, in reality, a generic term used to describe any form of post, primarily trench-based, that would have held an infantry section of the British Army. Like I say, applying section post to specific structures is likely. No, not likely. It is ahistorical. I've got. I need to do a blog on the evidence I've got for the Yorkshire section post to show that it's been applied wrong. But anyway, that's a story for another time. Anyway, we've got this lovely slit trench. We've got what we can partially see of an infantry section. The trench itself is revetted with timber and wriggly tin. We've got sandbags capping off the top as well to cover the exposed earth that would sit between this traverse. We've also got a nice, it's not a firing step, but it's like an elbow rest. You can see how it's been used by the troops here. To the front of the position, we've got these bits of timber coming out. These are really cool. This is a detail that you don't see very often at all. These are marking the arcs of fire for the various weapons, so we know quite, I've seen it mentioned in War Diaries, and I've had a discussion on Facebook about this on the UK Second World War Heritage Group, where it's mentions fixed lines for rifles and things like that, and this is that in practice. So generally what you get in terms of light machine guns is you'd have the extents of the arc marked out sometimes physically so that you don't stray outside your respective arc of fire, and that's what they've done here. They put these vertical stakes in so that you can fire within your allotted arc of fire, and that's a really cool little detail. These larger stakes, I'm not 100% sure whether they're for holding the revetment. You do see weapon slits and the like where they have a bit of bit of rope or wire to make to tighten, make it taut, the internal revetment, but I'm not sure. I can't see anything that relates to that. Interestingly enough, what we often see as well with these sandbag emplacements is they would place the excavated vegetation on top of these to disguise the position, because you can see how bright that is as a position. That would show up from the air extremely well. So there are other images. I think I used one in one of the presentations which shows some weapon slits under attack by brain gun carriers, which shows that they place the turf on top of the sandbags or the edge of the position to disguise it more effectively from the air. Also at the base of the kind of edge of the cliff, we've got some Danet wire applied there, which is generally where you'd put it. So you don't want the enemy being able to scale the top of the cliff. You put the Danet wire there, it makes it pretty much impossible for enemy troops to scale the top of the cliff right in front of your position. I'm guessing as well this was a sheer drop below, so that would be pretty much the only place you could place. So usually you place this out to about 30 yards so that the enemy can't throw grenades into your nice slit trench. But yeah, I think given the position itself overlooking a steep cliff, they've placed the Danet wire right under the the kind of lip of the cliff edge. We've also potentially got the remains of a tree there, so they've potentially cut down a tree to open up their arc of fire. So in the foreground here, one of the good indicators that these aren't the Home Guards. Firstly, they're on the coast in 1941. Secondly, short magazine, the Enfield with the bayonet attached. Here we've got as well this soldier who's likely to be the Bren number 2. So we've got the Bren gunner here taking aim with the bipods, folded inwards, and the gun resting on the edge of the slit trench there. He's going to be the number 2. This will be his rifle. In fact, you can see him there. You've got potential magazine. He's possibly loading that magazine. We've also got some spent cartridges potentially under the Bren and a used magazine there as well. In terms of the soldier, we can generally see that he's wearing what looks like 37 pattern battle dress. I think we've got the bayonet scabbards. They're all wearing 37 pattern webbing, which is a good indicator again that these are territorials or regulars. They appear to be wearing the 37 pattern webbing in battle order. I wrote this down the back of my hand because I never remember it. Yeah, in battle order, which is the general setup of, I've got my, oh, I'm not going to be able to take it down, but your 2 universal pouches for your ammunition, cross straps, web belts, your bayonet scabbard on your left hip, and later on I think it was a water bottle on your right. We can see there's no entrenching tool here. In 941 they were still using the fixed handle entrenching tool, again, which I've got in the background. I'll do a separate video looking at that because it's an interesting bit of kit. And I don't think at this time, I'm again happy to be corrected on this. I don't think the water bottle had been issued at this point, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think they were still using an earlier form of 37 pattern webbing. Their haversack, which would contain their general personal items, so spare socks and things, ground sheets for sleeping on, and this folded up thing here is the gas cape. So this is in the, I think it's called the stored position, and there would be 2 tapes that you can pull, and that covers you up. You can pull the hood over your helmet, put your respirator on. Another interesting bit of, in fact, anti-gas kit is the anti-gas brassard, or the indicator. I can't remember the exact title, but it's called a brassard. It's made of impregnated paper, which turns a specific colour when gas has been detected, which is a cool little detail. And we know at the time, obviously, there was an exercise going on. They were putting everything into practice, everything from their, what would be called, well, not the, what would be called now NCB, so nuclear, chemical, and biological. Yeah, ops, standing orders, or SOPs into place. So yeah, they're clearly preparing for any eventuality as part of this exercise. So that's a cool little detail, but in particular the paper brassard on the left arm there of the number 2 gunner. Yeah, another little detail as well. I think these might be Mark II helmets. Possibly. They don't have quite as wide a rim. There's one, I've got my Mark 1 star in the background there, which has got a helmet net on. At this time as well, helmet nets weren't issued. I don't think they went into issue until late 41, 42 from memory. But again, happy to be corrected on that. I'd like to get a bit of discussion. At this time, more common was the Hessian. It's like a sack. It's a Hessian helmet cover. But I think they'd been discontinued in early 1941 as well, not 100% sure. Anyway, it's interesting that detail's not there, and they're wearing what appear to be relatively new helmets. Another little detail spotted in the background here is this, what could potentially be, I thought it was an aberration with the image, but I think you've got as well potential here, gas indicator paint painted on that corner of the trench there, because you've got a second one possibly there as well. And if that's the case, then again, that's another means of indicating that gas has been dropped. So yeah, what points to this being an infantry section is the fact you've got the Bren number 1 and 2 riflemen there. So what would that be? That's 4 of your 8. 4 of your 8. So we'd have another section commander who's usually armed with a submachine gun of some kind, usually a Thompson at this point. 2 other riflemen. So yeah, I think I'm fairly certain we've got an infantry section here. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm actually recording this. What other details have we got? From this position, we can clearly see they are overlooking the beach. In terms of the vulnerable point, or the key thing they're trying to defend, that would be the beach. That's where the enemy is going to land. You want to be able to fire onto this beach to shoot the enemy as they land. With the bayonet fixed as well, that suggests that they are, expecting close combat at some point as well. In terms of standing orders, these soldiers would be under orders not to retreat. But that does not mean that all the defences were static. Your standing orders usually have at company level a 1 platoon out of, I can never remember this. It's, I think, did a company have, no, company was 3 platoons in your headquarters platoon. as well. I keep on thinking there was 4 platoons in a British Army company, but it's not. It's 4 companies in a battalion, I think it is. But yeah, one of your 3 platoons would be on, more than likely on counterattack duty. So you'd have a reserve platoon somewhere in the rear, and their job would be to counterattack into these positions if they were overthrown. But these troops here on the front line duty would be under the order to fight to the last man, last bullet. In this elevated position as well, then you can clearly see they're in a decent position to cover this beach. One thing that does surprise me is that I'd have expected the Bren to be somewhere in this corner here to put down enfilading fire onto the beach, but there could be a very specific reason for that. We can see it's high tide, possibly, or most likely high tide, but if this is the position where they were, then you're looking at an arc of fire from the Bren kind of in this direction here, which is a bit odd, but this is an exercise. Who knows what's going on? It might even be a stage photo as part of that exercise. But yeah, I would have expected the Bren to be here putting down enfilading fire along the length of this beach. What other little details do we have? I've already pointed out, yeah, the number 2 is doing what the number 2 does. He's loading magazines for the Bren gunner, located to the left of the gun. This is going to be a Mark 1 Bren. You can tell from the barrel jacket, this is the earlier type of flash hider on there. Annoyingly, the image isn't clear enough to see if this is a dovetail Bren, but yeah, we can clearly see it's a Mark 1. You can just about make out the rear dial sight there. And I think that's about it. Yeah, so just from this image we can work out generally who this unit possibly was. Obviously we know the date. The date of when the image was taken. We know this was part of an exercise, which I'll have to get the 11 Corps War Diary to find out more about it, but it's not my area of research, so maybe not, I don't know, maybe in the future. But it's an interesting little image, and there's a load of little details in here which provide a really good insight into defensive positions of this type, in particular slit trenches. Generally, top cover was something that was not implemented at this time, as far as I'm aware. I've seen standing orders saying that top cover is not to be used, and I can't remember why. It was either I can't remember if it was a splinter hazard or not off the top of my head. But again, this is why I have the documents on hand, because I can then look and check and corroborate what I'm doing. But yeah, we've got a nice little image. It's one of my favourite ones. I always use this in my presentations. And again, it gives you a really good insight into a defensive position of an infantry section. There's a nice bit of landscape context, nice bit of documentary evidence with it as well, and some interesting little bits and pieces that you won't see surviving in the landscape today, particularly these, these means of limiting your lateral arcs of fire from the position as well. So really cool stuff, and I'm feeling much more cheery now as a result of that. So I'll stick this up on the YouTube channel, and yeah, I hope it gives you a bit of entertainment too. As always, if you've got any comments or questions, stick them in the thing below. If there's anything I've said that in the video where I've not been too sure about, please do let me know, in terms of things like I can't remember what it was, issue of the helmet nets and all this stuff. I'm always happy to learn and be corrected on that type of stuff as well as the the information about the issue of the water bottle thingamabob. Yeah, what I might do in my next video is just grab my period 37 pattern webbing, which is to spec for this this exact period, and just do a quick run through of some of the rarer kits that they would have been issued with. But yeah, anyway, I hope that's been all right. I'll catch you in the next one.